Hey, this is Glover Teixeira, UFC light heavyweight champion.
Hi, I'm Robbie Lawler.
What's up, fight family? This is your favorite MMA coach, Thiago Alves, the Pitbull.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Pedro Munoz.
This is Mike Brown.
Guys, I am Alexei Oleinik, and welcome.
And welcome.
And welcome.
And welcome.
And this is We Want One Picks.
And you're watching We Want Picks.
To We Want Picks.
We Want Picks.
To We Want Picks.
To We Want Picks. Hi everybody from American Top Picks.
My name's Angelo, and welcome to We Want Picks. I'm going to walk through the entire UFC 271 Adesanya vs. Whittaker 2 fight card, and I'm going to give you my picks and my favorite DraftKings plays. We'll talk about who's expensive, who's inexpensive, and where there may be some value. Make sure you like this video and subscribe so you don't miss any of our content. And make sure you go to wewantpicks.com/DraftKings because we have a free DraftKings league that costs literally nothing to join, and we do free contests every week that also cost nothing. But if you win the contest and you're a member of this channel, I send you $50 as a congratulations. $50 cash, CASHAPP, PayPal, Venmo, however you want it, $50. I'm also thinking about doing a new promo. Help me in the comments. I want you guys to change your DraftKings profile picture to our We Want Picks logo. I don't know how to encourage you to do it. Hopefully you just do it for free. But let me know if there's some sort of promo that I can figure out, give everybody $1. I don't know. That changes it. Let me know in the comments what makes sense. We're trying to get our brand out there, and I'm always happy to pay if I need to. So let me know, and let's jump right in. What I've done here is I have sorted the UFC 271 DraftKings slate by price. We have the most expensive fighters on top, the least expensive fighters on bottom. And right out of the gate, we've got Alex Perez fighting Matt Schnell. Alex Perez is $9,600. He's the most expensive fighter on the card. And this fight is a rebooked fight from UFC 269. Alex Perez is coming off a year-long layoff, but he's a very good striker. He has amazing low kicks. He's got pretty good wrestling. He's even stopped fighters with those low kicks. This Jussier Formiga, this KO, TKO right here in the first round, that was from leg kicks. He just blasted leg kicks and got that finish there. He's an impressive guy, and he's a massive favorite here because he's fighting Matt Schnell, who has a questionable chin. Matt Schnell's a good counter striker. He's got solid BJJ. But what I think Matt Schnell does, he does a really good job backing up, stopping, and then if you do kick his legs, he fires back with some solid counter striking. The reason this fight was rebooked is because Matt Schnell was not medically cleared to fight at UFC 269. So Alex Perez is an enormous favorite. Right now, the odds have him at -400. He's a gigantic favorite. Let's take a look at some of his past fights here. So, there's no salary pricing because he's coming off a year layoff. So we don't have the salary pricing, but he scores well in his wins because his wins are stoppages. Though this decision with De La Rosa, he had a ton of control time because he had those 2 takedowns with that solid wrestling I mentioned, and he still scored 100 points. $9,600 is because everybody thinks that Schnell is going to get absolutely smoked. Let's look at Schnell real quick. And unfortunately for Schnell, even in his wins, he doesn't score that incredibly well because let's look at decisions. I don't think he's going to get a submission. If we look at the decisions, 60, 46, we come back up, 64. Matt Schnell is tough. I do think this fight is closer than those odds because styles make fights, and Matt Schnell does an amazing job firing back off of leg kicks specifically. So I do think this will be a closer fight. I don't think I'm going to spend the $9,600 on Alex Perez. I do think he wins, but $9,600 is just so much money to spend, and I don't know if he'll get a knockout. We'll see what happens because Matt Schnell does have a questionable chin. It's a tough get. Then we got Casey O'Neill at $9,500. Casey O'Neill's the real deal. At her core, she's a Muay Thai striker. She has solid elbows. She is willing to brawl. She'll get into a firefight, but she has added wrestling to her game, and she has quite a few takedowns. She has 8 takedowns in her last 3 fights, and you can see what that does for her points. She scores a ton of points. Granted, these are finishes, but she's going well beyond just scoring well in a finish because she's also getting a bunch of takedowns and having control time in these fights. She's fighting Roxanne Modafferi. Roxanne Modafferi, let's take a look at her. It is Roxanne's last fight ever. She's retiring, and Roxanne's had an interesting career because she's a true vet at this point. She has fought everybody in multiple divisions. She's not athletic, but she's really tough, really, really tough, and she's got very good jiu-jitsu, and she's worked hard for everything that she's ever gotten. Look at these losses, though. I mean, she does not score well in a loss, and that's because if she loses, she's not able to get a wrestling game going. She's not able to grapple, and she just can't put something together. But look at this. Decision. It's almost a guarantee that she will be in a decision. She is impossible to finish for the most part. I do not see Casey O'Neill finishing Roxanne, but I do think I'm going to have Casey O'Neill in my lineup because she's got the wrestling. She's got the control time. Even if we remove, like this was a third round sub with Procopio. Third round, what's a third round win bonus? 40 points or something. So let's take 10 points off of this. She still scored 100 points. And I think with Roxanne, she'll have even more success than she did with Procopio. So I do like Casey O'Neill quite a bit to win. And I will have Casey O'Neill in my lineup most likely. We got Kyler Phillips versus Marcelo Rojo. This is another awesome fight. This could be fight of the night. Kyler Phillips is a pretty well-rounded guy. He mixes in his wrestling well. He can strike. He can grapple. He does make some questionable decisions sometimes in fights. Like when he fought Julian Paiva, he gave that fight away. I mean, he had opportunities to win that fight. He gave that fight away. And if you look at the stats, he won it. But he did give that fight away. And he would have scored really well if he got that decision. Made a few different choices. He would have scored well, 104, because he would have gotten the 30-point win bonus. But before that, fun fight against Yadong. He beat LC and Silva as well. And he scores well in these fights. And that's because of the takedowns, because of the control time. So Kyler Phillips does score really well. He's fighting Marcelo Rojo. Marcelo Rojo is another really fun guy. He's coming off this loss to Charles Jourdain, but this was short notice and it was up a weight class. And ultimately, he looked great in that fight. He looked fantastic, and then he gassed, and he gassed hard. And then, Jourdain was able to make something happen. But this was a good fight. He only put up 37 points, and that's because he's not really going to get those takedowns and those control time points. He's just a busy striker. I like Kyler Phillips to win. I expect Kyler Phillips to put up some decent numbers. So $9,400 is probably a safe play for your lineup. And let's take a look at Ronnie Lawrence. I'm telling you right now, Ronnie Lawrence 100% needs to be in your lineup. He absolutely needs to be in your lineup. Look at this number. 8 takedowns. 8 takedowns. That's absurd. That is absolutely absurd. And the fight before that, which you don't see here, because it was on Contender Series, was 12 takedowns. And any one of you out there talking about, I fade Contender Series people, well, you're a moron who missed out on 135 points because he won on the Contender Series. Then you decided to fade him for some stupid, like, I don't even know what it is. Logic, myth. I don't know what it is. People just like saying, I fade Contender Series people. Well, if you faded Ronnie Lawrence in his last fight, you blew it because the dude scored 135 points. And yes, it was a stoppage, but it was at the end of the third round or in the third round. And he had almost 9 minutes of control time and 8 takedowns. Nobody is going to score points for you like Ronnie Lawrence is going to score points for you. And he's fighting Manny Martinez. Manny Martinez is a striker with solid power. He beat Guido Canetti in a decision. He scored 75 points. That was actually a pretty fun fight. But he's a striker. He's got big, heavy power. The reality is Ronnie Lawrence is going to take him down over and over and over. Manny will always be live because he's got that power, but Ronnie Lawrence is going to put up 1,000,000 points. Put Ronnie Lawrence in your lineup. I'm very confident. Then we've got Izzy at $9,200. Listen, this is a rematch, and he won that rematch. He scored 106 points in that rematch. All right. And historically, Izzy scores pretty well, right? He's got a couple of duds in the decisions, and that's because he doesn't really have any wrestling, so it's just straight up strikes, and he's not even a high volume striker. He's just very effective. So if he can't put you away, he doesn't put up a ton of points, and that's why Izzy's so tricky here, because yes, he already put Robert Whittaker away. Do I think he'll put him away again? No. I think this is a very different fight. If you watch that first fight, Robert Whittaker came out there very aggressive, headhunting, charging forward. He had some success. I thought he was winning that first round. I thought he won the first round, but then he was obviously dropped with a couple of seconds left. So didn't win it, but he was winning that first round. Looked good. Second round came out. More of the same. Charging, rushing the head, big heavy strikes. Landed a few, ultimately clipped, dropped, TKO'd. Took almost a year off. And since then, he's really buttoned things up. He's kept his pressure. He's kept whatever power he has, but he's mixed in more wrestling. He's added a little diversity to his strikes. And Robert Whittaker's looked great in his last 3 fights. Let's take a look at what he did in those. In his last 3 fights, 122, 73, and 88. 73 and 88, these are in competitive decision fights. He puts up decent numbers. I mean, 122 points. He had 4 takedowns in the fight against Gastelum, 2 against Till, and he has been very open. I am going to fight Israel Adesanya the same way that Jan Blachowicz did. I'm going to get in his face, take him down, beat him up from there. I think Izzy probably finds a way to win this fight, but I will have Robert Whittaker in my lineup because I expect takedowns. And I think he'll put up some decent numbers. I expect some takedowns. He certainly is very live to win this fight. He knows he got knocked out. He'll be very careful with the entries. But I expect some takedowns, some control time. I do think Izzy has some surprises on the ground, as he did for Vettori and a few of the other people he fought recently. But I like Robert Whittaker better at $7,000 than I do Israel Adesanya at $9,200, even though I think Izzy wins, if that makes sense. Then we've got Jeremiah Wells. He is fighting Blood Diamond Mathetha. Blood Diamond has no stats here. He's making his UFC debut. But Jeremiah Wells is coming back after, he came back after a 2-year layoff in this fight here, knocked out Warley Alves. Did it looking fantastic. And obviously he put up 96 points. He's a big, powerful striker with explosive hands, but everybody forgets he is a BJJ black belt, and he's a pretty accomplished one at that. He throws wild with intent, but the reality is those strikes are really there just to set up his BJJ. His opponent, Blood Diamond Mathetha. There's not going to be any stats here, but let's see if there's a picture for you. And it's absurd. They have his name listed as Blood Diamond. His name's Mike Mathetha. But no picture. Anyway, Blood Diamond Mathetha is a nasty kickboxer. He has over 100 combat sports under his belt. He's competed all around the world in 100 different fights. And he's coming from the same camp as Israel Adesanya and a bunch of other people on this card. You know he's well prepared. You know he's going to be a nasty kickboxer. And you know he's working on other aspects of his game. He only has 3 MMA fights, and he's won by decision, knockout, and submission. If you look at the submission, that win, he was thrown. They were tying up. He got shoulder thrown. And the way they landed on the mat, he literally just had the guy's back. That's just how he landed. So he grabbed his neck, choked him out. So don't go thinking that Mathetha is a world kick, a jiu-jitsu guy as well. Listen, here's the deal. I do think Jeremiah Wells wins literally because of his jiu-jitsu and overall MMA experience. But you get a guy like Mathetha with, and it sounds like I have a lisp, Mathetha. You get a guy like that, Blood Diamond, with that level of striking. It's just, there's just always something there. You got to worry about it. Jeremiah may take him down immediately, beat him up, submit him, and it was embarrassing, and that's the end of that. Or Blood Diamond could look like Alex Pereira did in his UFC debut, stuff a takedown and take your head off of your body. I'm not touching Jeremiah Wells here. I do think he wins. Just too many unknowns for me to spend this kind of money. That brings us to Sergey Morozov. And Sergey Morozov is fighting Douglas Silva de Andrade. Sergey Morozov, he's a very busy striker. He averages 4 takedowns per fight. He had 6 in this fight against Taha. He's a good counterpuncher. He's got solid power. His counter-striking works well for him because he baits you into striking. And then he drops and shoots. And even if he is taken down, like he was against Nurmagomedov, and ultimately he was submitted. But if you watch that fight, even as soon as he got taken down, he never stopped moving. He never accepted that takedown and continued to work up. Obviously, he scores well when he can get these takedowns off. 105 points in a 3-round fight. Let's take a look at Douglas Silva de Andrade. Where are you at? Here we go. Only $7,200, and he's a true veteran at this point. Go through the list. Piotr Jan, Renan Barao, he has fought Marlon Vera. He's fought the who's who in multiple divisions. And he's had sort of some wins and some losses, and that's because look who the hell he's fighting. Look who he has been stuck fighting. But ultimately, he's a pretty well-rounded guy. This fight's back at 135 pounds. He did explore 145 for a bit, but he's just a little undersized for that. He's a compact guy. He's got solid boxing, lots of power. He's got solid BJJ on the ground. It's mostly there as a backup plan, though, because he doesn't really initiate takedowns. I mean, he's got a couple takedowns here and there, but for the most part, he's not a takedown guy. I like Sergey Morozov to win. I think the wrestling will be the difference. I think he can take Douglas down, work him from there, and I think he'll have good enough top pressure and control to avoid the submissions from Douglas Silva de Andrade. But Douglas Silva de Andrade is probably one of the more live underdogs here, just from his wealth of experience. And like I said, he's got some power. He's a good striker, and he's got that jiu-jitsu to lean on. But the lack of wrestling is likely the problem. I don't know if I'm going to have Morozov in my lineup. $9,000 is a lot to spend in what should be a competitive fight when we have some other people that should dominate theirs. Then we've got Carlos Ulberg, another very good kickboxer from that city kickboxing team with Israel Adesanya, Blood Diamond, and others. He's coming off that loss against Kennedy Nzechukwu. He was dominating that fight and then ultimately took the KO in the second round. And when he talked about that fight afterwards, if you watch some interviews, he said he got frustrated because he was blasting Nzechukwu, making things happen, but Nzechukwu just didn't care. Didn't care. He took the shots. And Carlos Ulberg got frustrated, made some poor decisions, and ultimately was stopped. He said he wished he wrestled more. He said he wished he'd mixed in some other stuff. But that's what happens when you only have 4 professional fights. He only has 4 MMA fights over a 10-year span. And that's what happens. He doesn't have that same level of experience. He doesn't have the confidence to drop and take a shot. And he's fighting Fabio Cherant. And unfortunately for Fabio Cherant, his only 2 UFC fights were against William Knight and Alonzo Menafield. Alonzo Menafield was a short notice fight. He took it literally on like 2 days notice. And William Knight, he had a camp for that, and he was just blasted, knocked out early. And it sucks because if you only look at these 2 fights, you think Fabio sucks. And he does not. He's a good fighter. He's athletic. He's got some power in his left hands. He's got decent submissions. He doesn't really have the transitions, though. He doesn't really have the wrestling. But the reality is, he's a good fighter who has earned his spot in the UFC. Unfortunately, he's just had a rough go at it. And this is a weird fight because he's fighting Carlos Ulberg, a nasty kickboxer who has power, should be able to knock out Fabio Cherant. But the reality is, Carlos Ulberg does not have a true MMA background. I'm sure he's training all of the aspects, but just like with the Nzechukwu fight, he literally doesn't have the confidence to take the risk, taking a shot and things like that. I think Carlos Ulberg should win only because Fabio Cherant doesn't necessarily have the offensive wrestling to say, I'm not hanging with you here, let's take it to the mat. But I'm not touching Carlos Ulberg. I get it. He's probably live for a knockout. Too many questions. Too many questions. The guy has 4 professional MMA fights, and we just watched him get knocked out against a kickboxer with much lesser credentials in Kennedy Nzechukwu. So Carlos Ulberg probably will win. Fabio Cherant is live just literally because of his MMA experience and athleticism, and I may full-on change my pick by the end of this week. I'm not touching Ulberg at 89 hundo. Co-main event, we got Derrick Lewis. He's fighting Tai Tuivasa. This is a Derrick Lewis fight. It is the same as every other Derrick Lewis fight ever. He's not as good as his opponent, but he will always be live for a knockout, period. That's the breakdown. He's not as good of a striker as Tai Tuivasa. He's not as versatile of a striker as Tai Tuivasa. He's not as fast as Tai Tuivasa, but he hits harder. He hits harder than anybody on planet Earth. I don't care what they say about Francis Ngannou being the hardest hitter in the world. It's probably Derrick Lewis, legitimately. And he doesn't matter how far behind he is in a fight. One punch. Look at this Volkov fight. I mean, there was only 39 strikes in 15 minutes, and then one, bang, got the knockout. The guy is low volume, low output, literally waits and sits for one punch. And he's fighting Tai Tuivasa. Tai Tuivasa is a very good, well-rounded striker. Very good, well-rounded striker. Riding his own little win streak here. And look at this. He puts up some real points. And I will have Bam Bam Tuivasa in my lineup. Again, he's the better striker. He's the better fighter, period. He's got really nice leg kicks. He's got not as much power, but he's got his own power. He has a really good chin. We did see that chin get tested against Greg Hardy. So this fight here, Greg Hardy did have him a little rocked. And if that exact same punch lands, but it's from Derrick Lewis, it might have put Ty out. And that is worrisome. The fight's in Houston. Last time Derrick Lewis fought in Houston, he literally folded under the pressure, and he talked about that afterwards. Just too much pressure. I couldn't get it done. I'm sorry. I don't know what he looks like here, but I got to go with Tai Tuivasa, especially at $7,400. The streak he's riding, the skill set that he has, I got to go Tai Tuivasa. But if he gets flatlined, just like Dawkins did, it is what it is. It is a Derrick Lewis fight. Take your chance. We got Maxim Grishin fighting fellow Connecticut boy, like myself, William Knight. Maxim Grishin is a fun fight. So William Knight is a last-minute replacement opponent. He took it because Ed Herman had to drop. Maxim Grishin is a striker. He throws in combinations, but he loves sitting on a big right hand, so he's waiting for that right hand to fire it off. He does an amazing job of waiting, and then as soon as you look like you're off balance or you overcommit to something, he comes rushing forward with combinations, looking for that big power. And he is like a shark with blood in the water. If he thinks he has you in trouble, he pounces, and he has fantastic finishing instincts. Ultimately, he is a solid striker that does have some wrestling if he needs it. He's coming off that loss to Jacoby, which was a good fight, and statistically speaking, it was a very close fight. The difference was some failed takedown attempts, and he was backing up when he shouldn't have a few times, and the judges liked that. If we take a look at William Knight, William Knight's coming off of that win over Alonzo Menafield. And that was a solid decision win, and it just reinforces that William Knight, looking the way he looks, having the power he has, it's incredible that he has cardio, because he does have cardio. He can push somewhat of a pace. He also has some solid wrestling. I'm from Connecticut. He's a Connecticut wrestler. So he's got some solid wrestling in his back pocket. We saw that. He's got 4 takedowns against Cameron. Jung actually bullied William Knight and took him down over and over again, which was very surprising that somebody as physically imposing as William Knight was bullied. But then Sharon, he knocked out cold, and Menafield was a solid fight, and he won that fight by pushing the pace in the 3rd round. If this was a full camp William Knight, I actually would like William Knight to win this fight against Maxim Grishin. But the reality is Maxim Grishin had a full camp. William Knight did not. William Knight is big. He's jacked. He definitely has weight to cut. I don't know. He relies on his cardio to win these fights, and I don't know if that cardio is going to hold up. So I'm going Maxim Grishin here. $8,700 is more money than I would like to spend, and you make that decision. If you think William Knight is going to gas hard, you got to go Maxim Grishin, because he has cardio, he has hands, and he will pounce if he sees William Knight tired. But if you think William has enough cardio to hang, then this is not worth the money. I do think he could potentially stop William later after William blows his load in the 1st round looking for something. But if William Knight had a full camp, he would be my pick. I like that matchup, but he does not have a full camp, so he's not my pick. We have an awesome fight, Jared Cannonier, and he's taking on Derek Brunson. And this is a crazy fight because Jared Cannonier is massive. Dude started his fight career at heavyweight. He worked his way down to middleweight, kept the muscle, kept the power. He's got really solid takedown defense and obviously a ton of power in his hands. He's coming off this nice win over Kelvin Gastelum that everybody thought Gastelum might be able to take him down. He couldn't. And then Robert Whittaker smoked him. Robert Whittaker danced around him, touched him up, made things happen, and looked great. Jared Cannonier, heavy-handed, solid takedown defense, and he defended 8 takedowns against Kelvin Gastelum. And Kelvin Gastelum's a very good wrestler, and everybody's going to talk about, well, Derek Brunson's a good wrestler too. First of all, I think Kelvin Gastelum's a better wrestler than Derek Brunson. But Derek Brunson, as of late, has been a great wrestler. He does have some power in his hands. He has implemented a wrestle-heavy game plan lately, and it has worked for him. Look at this, 3, 6, 4, 2, 4. And then before that, you're not going to find any. Look at that. Look at that. He has 19 takedowns in his last 5 fights. 19 takedowns in the last 5 fights. And he had 10 takedowns total in his first 14 fights. That's how much wrestling has transformed this guy's game plan. He's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wins in a row, all because of that heavy wrestling coming off. He just smoked Darren Till. He embarrassed Darren Till. I do think Jared Cannonier wins this fight. I understand Derek Brunson's wrestling as of late has been fantastic, but Jared Cannonier has legitimate, insane power. And Derek Brunson has a questionable chin. KO loss, KO loss, KO loss, KO loss, KO loss. All right, that chin didn't get better. He just avoided taking big shots by wrestling. And Jared Cannonier is going to stuff a lot of those takedowns like he did against Kelvin Gastelum, and he's going to let his hands go, and he's going to have that power. Jared Cannonier, in my opinion, stops Derek Brunson, and I like him at $8,600. Then we have Renato Moicano. And Renato Moicano, this is an interesting matchup for him too, because he's fighting Alexander Hernandez. And Renato Moicano is a nasty jiu-jitsu guy that has good technical hands. He's got solid hands, very solid, very good jiu-jitsu. He just beat Chase Hooper in a grappling match in December. Straight grappling, not a fight. But the problem with Renato Moicano is he also has a questionable chin. Look at this. KO loss, KO loss, KO loss. He does have solid submissions win, coming off this nice one over Jai Herbert, 126 points, obviously, because there was a stoppage. But let's look at Alexander Hernandez. And Alexander Hernandez is interesting because he looks like a world champion, and then he'll come back out and just look terrible. And in some of these fights, like this fight against Trinaldo, a lot of people think he lost that fight, but it was a good fight, and he fought really well. And then he has a nice win over Beneil Dariush. And the reality is Alex Hernandez is a good wrestler who doesn't use his wrestling as much as he should, but he's got power in his hands, and he's very fast and very athletic. I think if Alex Hernandez stands in front of Moicano and does not threaten the wrestling, doesn't threaten the takedowns, he will lose a kickboxing match. I think Renato Moicano will just piece him up, touch him up, solid volume as he's done to other people in the past. Even though he's a grappler, I think Renato Moicano will win a striking fight against Alexander Hernandez. But if Alexander Hernandez threatens a takedown or two, and now Moicano's worried about that or trying to get his own takedowns, then I think Alex Hernandez straight up knocks him out. So I like Alex Hernandez to win this fight. I have to trust that he will try to wrestle and not just become what we just saw Miles Johns do. Sit there, wait, back up, do nothing, throw a big punch, missed it. Oh, let me wait, throw a big punch, then get exhausted and have nothing and just fold under the pressure. I hope that's not what happens. I do like Alexander Hernandez here to beat a chinny Renato Moicano. Then we got Bobby Green taking on Nasrat Haqparast. Bobby King Green has that Roy Jones Jr. style boxing. His hands are low. He comes leaping in with his jab, leaping in with his right. And he's a ton of fun. The dude is durable as all hell. And we saw that in the Fiziev fight. He was on the wrong side of a beating and just kept coming and coming and coming. And even stole that third round because he was fresh and never say die with Bobby Green. He just straight up retired Al Iaquinta with a beautiful 1-2. Just 1-2, dropped him, put him out. The reality is I knew that was going to happen. Al Iaquinta had his time, but he is literally a real estate agent now. I think that fight was at MSG, and he's a New York guy, and his whole dream was to fight at MSG. I guarantee he never would have fought again if he didn't have the opportunity to fight there. So Bobby Green took his head off, did what he was supposed to do, and good for him. But, you know, it is what it is. This Moises loss was an interesting one because he was basically pieced up. And, he gets caught in some of these striking fights, and he has to mix in his grappling, similar to Alex Hernandez. You have to mix in your grappling and threaten with that because Bobby Green is not a finishable guy. Like, look at this. One loss by finish in, I don't know how many fights this is, but it's a lot of fights. He's a very, very, very tough guy. He's fighting Nasrat Haqparast, who's also a very tough guy and a heavy-handed striker. But he's coming off this loss to Dan Hooker, where Dan Hooker grappled the shit out of him. All of a sudden, Nasrat Haqparast is defending takedowns, getting taken down. Did not expect that. He thought he was going to get a kickboxing war, and he didn't. And it's interesting because does he go back and say, I need to work on my takedown defense? And now all of a sudden he's prepared because I think strike for strike, Nasrat hits harder and is the better striker. Bobby Green will have more volume, but Nasrat is definitely the better striker who hits harder. But if Bobby Green starts to get some takedowns and has even a tiny bit of the success that Dan Hooker has, Bobby Green wins this fight. So Bobby Green's my pick. I like him at that price point because now we're basically even money. So I like him at that price point. But the reality is, Nasrat Haqparast has bombs and can make something happen. That takes us to Andrei Arlovski. He's fighting Jared Vanderaa. Andrei Arlovski, you know who he is, right? Former UFC heavyweight champion, one of the most accomplished heavyweights to ever fight in the UFC. And he has awesome striking, fantastic footwork, and he's got grappling in his back pocket as well. These wins over Carlos Philippe, and Chase Sherman, I think that's exactly what this fight looks like. I think it's a 3-round kickboxing match, and Andrei Arlovski's footwork should probably get it done. $8,300 is a great price. But if you look at Jared Vanderaa, listen, he's had a rough go. He lost to Spivak, who's a nasty grappler. He lost to Romanov, who's a nasty wrestler. But he smoked Tafa. And this was interesting because he had 121 significant strikes. He built his career before the UFC as a grappler. But he's been matched up against two nasty grapplers, unfortunately. So that fight against Tafa was a surprise because he came out there, didn't grapple. He just jabbed his way, dominated his striking, and just got it done that way. He was a good come-forward striker with a fantastic jab and solid speed. He looked like a big, athletic guy. I imagine he's going to try to do that with Andrei Arlovski, and I think Andrei Arlovski will dance around and get it done. So Andrei Arlovski's the pick. I love him at $8,300. The problem is he doesn't score that well. He doesn't score that well. 63 in this decision win, 74 in that decision win. I do like him to win. I will probably have him in my lineup, but look at this. 44, 50. I mean, maybe he won't be in my lineup because those are very low points, but I do think Andrei Arlovski wins this fight. Jared Vanderaa, he could probably put him out. Not that we've seen him put out on his feet before, but he's been KO'd on the ground. Man, why I'm struggling with this is I'm positive Andrei Arlovski is going to win. I will probably have him, a bet on him, a money line bet on him. But 50 points in DraftKings, you're looking for more than that, but you're also looking for wins. We'll see what I end up doing. Let me know in the comments what you think about Andrei Arlovski in your lineup. And then the final fight is AJ Dobson. No data because it's official UFC debut, and he is fighting Jacob Malkoun. And I say official UFC debut, he's coming off that solid Contender Series win. I did my rant before. People who say I fade the Contender Series guy, it makes no sense to do that. It makes no sense to do that. Look at the fight. Look at the fighters. Look at last week. Jonathan Almeida just pummeled Danilo Marquez, and everybody was like, I don't know. I'm going to fade the Contender Series guy. The Contender Series. He went out there and just embarrassed Danilo Marquez from second 1 to second 30 when the fight was over. So fading somebody just because the idea that you're fading somebody who has an awesome win inside the UFC cage because it was on a different show is so bizarre to me. Rant over. Jacob Malkoun is a grappler. He prefers to strike, but he is a grappler. He's heavy-handed. He likes to plot forward. He throws everything with power, but it's looping, right? Even his jab, he's here. It should be right up the middle. Instead, it's around. It's closer to a left hook than it is to a straight jab, and everything comes that way. Everything has a little bit of a loop to it, and that's going to be a problem because AJ Dobson is not gun shy, has incredible speed and solid power. He is fast. His knees are fast, his kicks are fast, and his hands are very fast. And what I love about that is he's not gun shy. How many strikers have we seen that have power and speed, and for some reason they're gun shy? We just saw Trajan Gore lose to Brian Battle because he just refused to let his hands go. That was his fight to win. He had Brian Battle dropped multiple times and just did nothing. And that is not a problem that AJ Dobson suffers from. He lets his hands go. He comes forward, crazy speed, crazy power. And then if it hits the ground, He's a well-rounded guy. He's got solid fundamentals on the ground. He's got good control on top. He's pretty well-rounded. He's definitely a grappler. His takedowns are not very good. He'll get like an underhook and then try to charge forward and run through it. But I like AJ Dobson to win. AJ Dobson will be in my DraftKings lineup, and everybody with this fake narrative of I fade Contender Series people, please make the case in the comments section why that is something worth doing. Because for every fighter that you successfully faded, there are so many others that came off the Contender Series and had an awesome win in the UFC. Especially the ones that had full camp. What ends up happening with a lot of those guys is they have a win in the Contender Series, then there's a last-minute replacement, so they grab a Contender Series guy. And that's not a fair comparison, right? Full camp for short notice. Either way, that's my rant. I don't know why I decided to get all worked up about that today, but go to wewantpicks.com/DraftKings. Join our free DraftKings League. Become a member of this channel. There's a join button under the video. If you become a member and you win our free league, I send you $50. It's that simple. Cash App, PayPal. I literally send you $50. Last week's winner was my cousin. He's not a member. Prick. Didn't get the money. And I get angry texts all the time. Where's my 50? Sorry, bud. Not a member. Related or not, that's your problem, not mine. Become a member. wewantpicks.com/DraftKings. And let me know what you think about the idea of getting you guys to make our logo your DraftKings profile picture. I'd love if you did it for free, but I know how people are. Let me know below. I'll see you guys on Tuesday night for our full card breakdown, on Friday for our final thoughts, and then on Saturday for our pre-fight live full card parlay.